This is Isaiah Jerez here today on Turning Point Covenant of Justice. We have Eric Humes here today. He's going to share with us his story of growing up as a redheaded stepchild, making connections with family, and now serving in the community of Henderson. So Eric, where can people find you?
My office is located in Henderson at 650 South Green Valley Parkway, Suite 130 at the corner of Horizon Ridge and Green Valley Parkway. Online at www.vegasrooftops.com. My cell is 702-528-1500.
And Instagram? TikTok?
Rooftop.reality, rooftop.reality, rooftop.reality.
Nice. So you're redheaded stepchild.
Redheaded stepchild, yeah. A lot of times, I use that as a jokingly mannerism, but I literally grew up as a redheaded stepchild. And a couple of years ago, I actually tracked down my biological dad, and it was kind of a funny story. So
how did you knew your dad's name then?
No, I've never, up until a couple of years ago, to when I verified my half brother Jim, I had never really known his name. So on my birth certificate, it said a name, but that person is like the only person that is that name is like 12 years older than me.
So it wasn't your dad.
It wasn't my dad. And it's because my biological dad never went by his legal name. He always went by a pseudonym. His entire life almost is what I found. Mm-hmm. And so like every 7 years, I'd get that itch to try to track down my biological dad. Like one of the things that, like, not knowing who your biological dad is, like I watch a lot of Relative Race, which is a show where contestants race across the country for 50 grand. And my wife and I actually applied for that show. And along the way, they meet family members that they've never known. And but I had never known my dad. What happened was I got a notification from not Ancestry, but it was another genealogy site that said, hey, this might be your great granddad and his wife. And
did you get notification? Was it like a DNA?
No, it wasn't a DNA, because I was one of the original, like in the first round of 23andMe. I put that out there, and now I get notifications like from cousins, distant cousins, that hey, we might be, we're related through DNA, and then we try to trace it. And but at this time, I mean, this is like almost like now it's about 10 years ago that this happened, and so the technology wasn't as involved, and I don't think like the globe or people were as involved. People didn't trust the technology back then. But on a chance, I'm like, hey, that'd be great to know, like, hey, what are my genes? Like, what is my background? Mm-hmm. And that is something that I did find out. And
so it's notification that you get about there might be a relative hit.
Yeah, I forget where I was looking at. I was online or something, like trying out a different site. I forget what it is, but it said, hey, this is most likely your great grandfather and his wife. And then that led me to some other information, and then happenstance, like within like a month or two, I was in Dallas and for a real estate convention, and on Monday night I'm like, well, if this information's true, then this might be my niece. So I reached out to her via Facebook Messenger and said, hey, is so-and-so your dad? Is so-and-so, are you related to so-and-so? She never responded. And then the next night I was at dinner at Chili's. I mean, that's how detailed I remember this. Like, we were sitting down at Chili's in downtown Dallas. And so I'm like, I just Google his name, and the first number that came up was blank. And then I'm like, I tried the next number, and it just happened to be my would-be sister-in-law's cell phone. And I call and said, hey, this is Eric. I think, we might be related. I think, Jim or JB might be my dad. And she's like, Jim's not your dad. That's my husband. That's your brother. It's probably your brother. And she's like, Jim's unavailable right now, but, yeah, you could meet up the next night. And it's crazy because on a bunch of levels, because normally I'm not a really nervous person. I deal with a lot of stress all the time. But I mean, obviously this was something that I had kind of waited for my whole life. And so I went and I did.
Because at this point you still don't know, right?
I don't know.
You're just anticipating that.
Yeah, just anticipating. Yeah. And so we went to like Ross, like in the parking lot. We met him in North Texas, and
so they want to meet you somewhere public.
Yeah, somewhere
right
public.
Yeah.
So we meet at Chili's in North Texas by coincidence, and it's close to their house, and they're like, yeah, let's meet there. I'm like, but now by then they've looked me up on Facebook, right? And I've been a really public person for a long time.
You post your whole life out there.
Yeah, I post my whole life out there. And so so even talking to her, she's like, I'm pretty sure you're related. And
because of just the looks, or because
just
of the way?
Because of the looks.
Yeah.
And so we meet up the next night, and I'm 6'2", and I'm generally somewhere between 230 and 250. So I'm usually one of the biggest persons in a room. My brother Jim comes in 6'5", probably 275, but just built like a Mack truck. And I'm like, oh, this is how everyone else in the world feels, like smaller. And I played basketball with guys who are 6'5", but my brother Jim, he's like well built. He could be like 280, but he still works out to this day. And we sit down, and she's like, has a big manila envelope.
And they had brought this to Chili's too.
They brought this to Chili's. They're like, here's all these pictures of your dad. And it's like looking in the mirror. Like he was a professional rodeo. He was a steer wrestler. So his chest was much bigger, but he was about the same size as me, same hair color, same receding hairline, still, thin on top, and blue eyes. And so we start talking. We have dinner.
You tear up? I mean, I imagine you start looking at this stuff. How do you maintain your composure?
Yeah, I had an assistant with me, and I had a business partner with me, and they're like, we've never known Eric to be so quiet. Like, Eric was just so quiet. And I'm like, for me, it was just like, obviously a flood of emotions, flood of I can't believe this is going on. And then we just start talking, and then even the next day, Kathy calls me and says, hey, it was really great, going out to dinner with you. And she's like, just so you know, Eric, it was crazy for them too. They're like, you sound like your dad, you look like your dad, like even the way you walk and talk, your manner. This is what she's telling me, because she helped take care of my biological dad to the end of his life, and she's like, your mannerisms are just like your dad's. And it was rough too. I was still dealing with a lot of emotions, like looking in the mirror, like, it kind of come full circle. The great thing about that story, though, is since then I've helped other people, good, bad, or indifferent, is fill in the blanks for their families. Like, after, like, just telling my story that, hey, it can kind of pseudo work out. My brother and I don't really have a relationship anymore, but the fact that I am at like peace, that like, hey, I completed my family tree in a way. Come to find out, a close friend of mine is super related to me. We are cousins, like second cousins.
Through your dad's line.
Through my dad's line, yeah. And so she was able to, like 1 year for Christmas, gave me a huge like binder, she's like, here's all the stories from our side of the family. And her mom was just super excited because it was just a kind of a crazy story how, like, my side of the family,
Your side of the family
from my dad's side,
okay,
like his dad and his grandfather, like they didn't have big families. They only had one kid, and whereas everyone else in the family, they went on to have a lot of kids and more traditional families. And what it was is it was 4 siblings. It was my great grandfather and his 3 sisters, and the 3 sisters ended up having more like traditional family life, and my great granddad just, that was not in the cards for him, and led a more nomadic life, and worked as a rancher and cattle and up north, and they had one child who was my biological dad, and he kind of led a he led a very fruitful life, had many biological children, and me being the last one that I know of, and so that was kind of interesting too, hearing all these stories. I was able to look up different articles about him and about his life. So
yeah, that's similar to a story of my dad, because my dad came to the United States relatively young, and his father was estranged from the rest of my dad's family. And so one day my dad just started sending a bunch of messages to people in Colombia with the same last name, and then it was his nephew that ended up reaching out to him saying, hey, I think you might be related to my dad, right? And then you start comparing the names, and you see that, and it's been cool, right? We don't have a lot of close relationships with them, but we do have that connection with them now, and been able to meet them, and yeah, it means something, right? To connect and say, hey, like we're family.
Yeah, we're family, and we're humans, and we share some same blood, and that's, and also the unknowing, like so, like talking about my line, like things that I learned. One of the first things is my brother's like, hey, go get your heart checked out. Like his full sister, my half sister, died when she was 55 from a heart attack, and so I went out and now I get annual heart tests. My dad ended up dying when he was 73, so he lived a full life. But just hey, is there any weird family not skeletons, but just biological things that I should be aware of?
Yeah, we learned that my grandfather ended up dying because some lady put a curse on him. And so he ended up dying from stomach sickness and smell for a number of years before he actually ended up going.
Wow.
So curses, right?
Yeah.
How do you avoid those curses?
Yeah. Don't piss off the wrong people.
Yeah. But you're talking about family, and you're very open as well, right? On social media, right? You can see everything that you're doing out there. How does your family deal with that? Your wife and your kids, how do they appreciate that? They're like, Dad, don't post this.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a very intense question, actually, for our household. Each one of
so how many kids do you have?
3.
You have 3 kids.
I have 3 kids. My oldest just graduated from high school, but he also graduated with his associate's degree. So he's kind of ahead in life, and he's got a great head on his shoulders. He's doing great things. Just went up to college to SUU, which is in Cedar City, Southern Utah University.
And how was that when you dropped him off? Were you any tears on your part or on Mom's part?
He didn't let us drop him off. He just drove up and said, "See ya."
Just left home with his stuff packed.
Yeah, and then my wife went up the following Monday, and he's like, "Oh, so you're gonna fill the fridge? Yeah, come on up Monday." And so it was good for her, and he actually came home last weekend over Labor Day weekend, and I think he really appreciated, the fact that we love him and we miss him, and it's a growing pain for all of us. Like a lot of times, you see those siblings fight, but now the sibling's not there, like you don't take that for granted, and even my youngest is like, man, I miss Aiden and I miss having him around, like even when he's not teasing me.
Really, so the peace in the house, that's enjoyable or no?
Who knows?
Yeah.
And it's very different. But going back to like social media, so like my wife has her boundaries on like what she likes to post. I used to be a lot more involved in social media. I've stepped back a little bit. Now I have people who help my social media, and so it makes my life a little bit easier. Like, hey, within these bounds, and and so and I'm out doing so many things anyways with people that I also consider like, do I need to post this? Is one of my thoughts. Like, because I'm actually out here doing it, do I need to share this with people? What's the point of me sharing this with people? And then like I said, so my oldest, he's got his set of boundaries, and then my daughter's more like me, where we're out doing things all the time. So we like to share our activities, like to share, hey, we went on this adventure today and we got to share it. So, and then my youngest isn't on social media at all, so we haven't set that boundary yet. So
Yeah. And as with you and your wife, how do you determine when the child's ready to get on social media, and then how do you monitor that?
yeah, we have certain like timelines and we monitor it. It's based on maturity, obviously, but now that all three of our kids are teenager and older. Our youngest doesn't really desire it though. Like he doesn't, what I tell people is like, even though Colin and I look a lot alike, he doesn't like to roll entourage. Like he's a one-on-one person. And so he doesn't need even a social entourage. It's not a big deal for him. Whereas my daughter and I, like, more the merrier. We're like, oh, hey, what's going on? Oh, you guys are available? Let's go. And so I think that turns into we're more social in real life and we're more social online. So, yeah, what do you guys do?
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's, when do you open that door for the children to then, experience the stuff? Because studies have shown it can be very destructive to young women, especially.
Yeah.
And so we kind of held back, and then my daughter's, she's 17 and a half, and so she's just barely getting on Instagram just now.
Yeah, and I don't think she missed out on anything, is what I don't. Yeah. I mean, my daughter, same thing. She's 16, and we only allow her on Instagram, and so we're able to, like, hey, keep it within this boundary. And I think what kids eventually learn is, like, oh, it's FOMO, fear of missing out. And I think as they get older, they're like, oh, I didn't really miss out on anything. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are several different platforms, right? And my son, who's younger, and he's been on, it's Strava. So it's a place where, people that are in that kind of active community, hiking, running, cycling, that they kind of follow each other there.
Yeah.
And so he's been on there for a number of years, but that one's a little bit different because it's more focused on like, hey, what have you been out there doing, right?
Right.
Instead of focusing so much on what you look like. So he's been involved in that quite a bit, and I think it's good. He's been able to help him kind of build some bonds with some friends that he might not see at school so frequently.
Yeah, and Strava's nice too because it's across platforms. I'm just saying, for like compared to like Apple Health, or I know on Google there's different apps, but Strava is across platforms, so you can see like, hey, I went on a bike ride, and you can cheer your friend on. Hey, great job, new personal record. You're sticking to the consistency. Which that's another lesson for kids to learn, is being consistent is a greater achievement than a personal record. So.
Yeah, consistency in everything, whether or not it's in sport, education, or in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've been pretty consistent on the social media stuff, right?
Yeah.
Especially through your own business.
Yeah, through my own business. It started off though, I mean, I don't hear a lot of stories about how other people get started in social media. So I had a friend who is actually a business consultant, and he was really hype on Twitter when Twitter first came out. And it's funny because, I mean, he's become a successful businessman since then. But I remember him coming to the office and like, oh, you got to get on Twitter. And I'm like, I don't have anything interesting to say. I don't need people knowing what I'm doing. Like at that time on Twitter, people were posting, hey, I just did this. Hey, I just did that. And it was just the novel thing. And I never really jumped to Twitter as much. But then when Facebook came out and it came open to the public, it was funny. My friend Adam, who works for Apple now, we were kidding about, and he's younger than I am, and he's like, "Oh, Eric, you don't know that many people." I'm like, "I'm pretty sure I know that many people," and we would kind of do like this little mini competition to see how many friends that we could either get on Facebook or we knew on Facebook, and I've been lucky. I mean, most of the people in my Facebook contact list are legitimate people that I know, like people that I would talk to anyways, and or that I met at conferences or business colleagues. And so I think it helps my social media feed be a little bit more genuine as opposed to just trying to make friends with people that I don't know or just in the ether. And but yeah, since then I just have a lot of people that have helped, and I try to help people too on social media as well. Like, set your boundaries, find out what fits you, and find a purpose. It's surprising. A lot of people are like, "Oh, grandma's not on social media." Grandma's on social media, and what I found is, a lot of people like to. That's where a lot of families, it's easier for families to, like, you talked about your family in Colombia, it's where families are able to post like, hey, graduation or birthday pictures. It makes sharing that part of life like remotely so much easier to like kind of know. There's a friend and she was like, hey, what's going on with so-and-so? And because I talk to people all the time, well, I don't, like for a lot of part, I know it's kind of going on with a lot of people, and but social media also helps like fill in the gaps, like.
Yeah, because it's difficult to communicate with everybody that you know, right?
Yeah.
Was just last night I was on Facebook and I saw a notice of, post from 3 days ago that someone that I have known for years, they passed away.
Yeah.
And it was just, if I hadn't saw that post, I don't know if I would have ever known. And, I was able to quickly send a text message to the daughter and send my condolences, right? And then find out when the funeral is going to be.
Yeah, same here. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and his sister passed away, and I can't remember if I knew that or not, but so we talked a little bit about that, and I gave my condolences, but now they were like a month late, and so. So in those regards, yeah, it helps you keep in touch with people for the right reasons. So,
yeah. So, you've been a real estate agent for how long?
21 years.
And now you're shifting and starting to help out a little bit more, be more of a public servant. Now you're working as a planning commission with Henderson.
Yeah. So that's been a great appointment. It's been a great learning experience for me. And then
and tell me, like, how do you get appointed for the commission?
So part of that is you have to. So I got appointed by the mayor, and the mayor, I think I came to because we talked about it, and it's because I do so many community events already. Like I do community stuff at a lot of schools, a lot of neighborhoods. Like I'm out in the neighborhood and the community anyways. I was a volunteer coach in sports for 12 years.
With the City of Henderson?
Yeah. A lot of times 2 or 3 teams a weekend. So, I mean, for 12 years, like we were hot and heavy, during the week and on the weekend. And I raised my whole family here in Henderson. My wife grew up in Henderson. So we're very vested in Henderson. And I had always started, like, I had you can subscribe to agendas and newsletters, and I'd always subscribed to the Planning Commission. That was actually something on my, when she called, I was like, actually, that's something I'm actually interested in, because that's a commission or a committee that actually makes a huge difference. Looking at like, why did this get approved? Why did that, why was that let through?
And this is is it just development projects that they're
Just
reviewing?
just development projects. What people don't even see, and this is, what I like to do, because I'm kind of an educator too, is like, is how much effort goes into development, like how much time, labor. What people don't realize is, I think people see the city as like this big, bad, almost like a big brother that's trying to bully you all the time, or just a bully at the schoolyard. And really, the city is actually very pro-citizen. And if you have ideas for growth or opportunities, or how to promote the Henderson lifestyle, the city wants that, actually. And so I try to help people understand that. And then we try to take into consideration the whole city, that, as a city, one of the things that they're trying to do is they want to promote, when you say growth, like, what does that really mean? What that means is economic opportunities, right? You talk about your daughter who's 17 and a half, talk about my son who's 18, is now when our kids become adults, they want to have an opportunity to raise a family. And hopefully they choose here in Henderson to raise that family, to have a opportunity to work and live and play. And so as a public servant, you have to look at how do we develop those opportunities. You do a little bit of cycling when people aren't. I don't recommend driving on bike trails. It's really important that you
Even
don't
if
do
you're a
that.
planning commissioner.
Just to say, I had a friend that was out exploring bike trails one day, and one of the professional cyclists almost ran into me.
Holy cow, yeah. I mean, some of those bends over there on the Wetlands Trail, like, you just can't see around it.
You
There's
can't
a bunch
see
of
around
dirt,
it.
so
Yeah.
and you don't expect trucks out there for sure.
And
Especially on the trail.
Especially on the trail, especially when it's
Yeah.
110 outside, you don't expect cyclists out there.
You got to get home some way.
But that is part of it. Like, there's so many like trails. There's how do you when we talk about the Henderson lifestyle, what people don't know is like the sports program, the Parks and Recs program, is nationally recognized. And
yeah, it's amazing, right? Like, there are certain regulations where you have to have so much parks or green space per the amount of housing units.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and you don't see that in other
You don't
communities,
see that.
especially like, not to knock North Las Vegas, but you don't see it in North Las Vegas at all.
Yeah, it comes down to, and there's a lot of things that the city did to obtain that, either federal funding. Like, there's all this effort that goes into, like, when you see literally even a house go up, something as small as a house or something as large as an office building or commercial building, there's a lot of checks and balances that have to be put in, a lot of man hours that get put in, because depending on different codes, like what's going to be the effect of this business, like, what type of traffic does it bring in, what type of flow, what's the like, how many jobs is this going to provide, what type of jobs is it going to provide.
Yeah, and I want to touch on traffic flow, but going back to the green space and all that extra space, Henderson, for the most part, most of the communities have been able to do it without lids.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess explain a little bit of what lids are and how has Henderson been able to do that
So
without
lid is
collecting like an extra tax?
Yeah, is basically an extra tax in Henderson. It's called a SID, Special Improvement District. Seven Hills, Anthem used to have SIDs. For the most part, they've been paid off. Lids, what you find more prevalent in Las Vegas, is a land improvement district. And same thing when they have to extend the utilities out to the farther reaches of the city. In Southern Nevada, for the most part, they finance that through these special improvement districts where the eventual homeowner is kind of paying for that improvement, and the city basically fronts the money, and then the homeowner will end up paying it back.
So Anthem and Seven Hills used to have it. I didn't know
For
that.
the most part,
Yeah.
they had it, and but for the most part, it's been, I mean, gone on so long that those are almost non-existent anymore. So, but one of the things that people may not know is one of the goals for the City of Henderson is to have a public park within 2 miles of every citizen, of every homeowner, and which creates a lot of opportunity, and I think it creates a better lifestyle. It shows you Henderson's commitment to community, and we're not just a place to live. We're a place to thrive, really. And so that's one thing. So, and also you talk about traffic. Just so you know, the City of Henderson has very little to do with traffic. This is one of the learning curves.
Well, I wonder, and City of Henderson seems to have an affinity with traffic circles recently.
Roundabouts,
which are going up all over the place, and I love them. Right, I love them much better than sitting at a red light. I think the crashes that are involved in a roundabout are much less intense than those that are involved when you have intersections that are controlled by red lights. Because when people are running red lights, they're speeding through it. Right, they're flying through it.
Yeah, I think you're more of an expert than I am on traffic, probably. I mean, you deal with the aftermath.
Right? And I wonder about it right now too, right? I mean, I'm driving down Galleria. There's a lot of traffic circles. There's a lot of development going on where you've got a big manufacturing or big warehouse developments. You're gonna have tons of trucks going in there, and then you've got a lot of multifamily units going up. And I'm not sure exactly whether or not that road, Galleria specifically, is going to be big enough to handle all of that traffic. But
so the reason why I said,
but let's go back to traffic circles.
Yeah,
why is Henderson pushing the traffic circles?
Well, traffic circles have. I'm very pro traffic circle.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you a quick little story on. So one of my friend's son was killed out in front of a junior high 2 years ago, and that stretch of road was wide open, 4 lanes.
You're talking about South Henderson, over
Henderson,
Black Mountain, Nicola area.
Yeah, and so I went over and I filmed and I met with the city, and I was like, we have to do something about this. Like, this is basically a drag strip, and I was young, like. I have a lead pedal. Even once in a while now, my foot may get stuck on the gas pedal. It happens. We're human. But, meeting with the city, they had already had some plans. And going back to the traffic circles, they don't cost any residual cost, meaning there's no electricity required. There's no computer programming required. There's no change in, even like, there's no cost for the light poles. A lot of times you see cars, will hit a light pole. People don't realize those light poles are not cheap. They have to be, engineered and manufactured. And so if you start actually looking at the line items of a traffic signal intersection versus a roundabout, it becomes very economical. And the fact that, like what you alluded to, I don't even know what the speed is, but I think unless you have a high performance vehicle, it's hard to go through a roundabout faster than 20 miles an hour. And so right there, you're going to reduce, like you said, even if there is an accident, you're going to reduce the probability of fatalities. You're going to reduce the injury cycle, and it keeps traffic flowing. It's actually more fuel efficient. If you have a fuel aspirated vehicle, you're not having to stop and go, and so it allows you to keep moving at a generally nice pace without having to, come to a full stop. And that's what I know. A lot of people still get confused about roundabouts. I hear it all the time. Actually, they're like, "Oh, I hate roundabouts," and da da da. I'm like, I love roundabouts. Like, it gives you the opportunity. Like, honestly, if you miss the turn, and you just stay in the roundabout and keep going. And
whereas if you were stuck at the red light,
you'd have to go up, find a street, make a U-turn, come back. So I see a lot of pros in roundabouts, and I applaud the city of Henderson for kind of embracing that technology, because it's sometimes the best technology is the simplest. And that's what I see in a roundabout is it's a very simple but very effective technology. But what I was going to say, I was alluding to what most people don't know is a lot of the major thoroughways in Henderson and throughout southern Nevada is actually controlled by NDOT. It's actually controlled at the state level.
All the traffic control.
Yeah.
Really?
So I know you live out by Cadence, and Lake Mead Parkway is the major kind of highway between Las Vegas and the Lake Las Vegas or Cadence area, and that whole stretch of road is actually controlled by NDOT.
And so even Galleria, it's NDOT.
I don't know which parts of Galleria. I'd have to check that, but
It's kind of weird because you're heading down Galleria and as you get close to Boulder Highway, there's a little section that's county, not the city.
Yeah, and that's like Boulder Highway, that's NDOT, and Boulder Highway is a major, part of Henderson, and I know one of the great things is City of Henderson, in conjunction with NDOT, they're redoing Boulder Highway, and I love that because they're trying to gear it to more lifestyle that we're hopeful for in the future, a little bit more mass transit. I know that in Southern Nevada, nobody really is very pro mass transit, but when you go to other cities and you see how convenient, hey, maybe I don't have to drive there. I can find other modes of transportation. Like you and I like to bicycle, so anytime that they can protect cyclists more, I'm very pro, which they'll have better cycle lanes in the new Boulder Highway, which that'll be encouraging. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So I just want to end on one thing. So you're involved in a couple of projects. One that I'm kind of excited about. You're involved in a residential project.
Yeah. So
how much can you tell us about that?
It's a 10-lot residential subdivision, and
this is in Henderson.
In Henderson, of course.
I think which is in an area that's called the Horse Streets.
Horse Streets, Section 27. Yeah. The house sizes are going to be somewhere between 3,500 and 4,200 square foot. I was just telling a friend this morning, years ago, before I started this project, I had put it on my 3-year goal that I wanted to start a housing subdivision. I have experience, obviously, as a real estate agent, real estate broker, real estate investor, real estate. That's all I do every day. And so to see this finally start coming to fruition is great. And now some of the people in the city are like, yeah, Eric, now I see the whole process, right? I've seen it from how it comes from idea to how do we get this financed? How do we get this actually moved? We tore the house down. We're going to start grading in about 3 weeks, and it's actually coming to fruition. And that's a great process. And the great thing about that is, going back to, I can't remember that one movie with the robot that invents things. I forget the name of it, but it's the same thing. Like everyone's like, well, why are they building houses? You see the comments, oh, they're soaking up more. We don't have the water for that. What it is you see a need and you build a need. And so that's what we're really excited about is the demand for these type of houses, no HOA. It's actually 1/3 of an acre, what we call a Henderson half acre because it goes out to the middle of the street. Most people have opportunities for either a casita or a recreational garage on top of their 3-car garage.
And in a great location. You're right there next to BLM land, right? Next to a huge mountain, and there's biking trails right there. You can get to the
River
Lake
Mountain
Mead
Loop,
really easy, Boulder City.
There's actually bighorn sheep that populate the foothills right behind it. It's a great community. We do community events. It's got a River Mountain Park, which is a great city park there, very well wooded, and it's got a lot of recreational facilities. So,
yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, congrats on doing that and reaching that level. It's awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Eric, I'm grateful for you to come in today and share, and I'm excited to see what Henderson's going to have in the future.
I'm glad for the opportunity to be here, Isaiah. I appreciate all the work that you do in the community.
Yeah, cool. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for more.